It is such a privilege and a pleasure for me to have as a house guest, as well as our speaker here today, my dear friend Victor Ochen from Lira in northern Uganda. I'll say a few words about Victor and then let him tell his story, because it's an absolutely amazing story. I met Victor almost 20 years ago. And he was in his early 20s at the time and had already emerged as a significant figure in building peace in Uganda and in Africa. Victor is the youngest African ever nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Many other accolades, serves on the UN Commission on Refugees. Forbes magazine named one of the 10 most powerful people in all of Africa. Just absolutely extraordinary. And particularly for a young man who was born and raised in a displaced persons camp, essentially a refugee camp in northern Uganda, and has become a major figure worldwide in efforts to reduce the frequency and severity of violent conflict. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Victor, and let you tell a little bit of your story, because it's an amazing story, and segue from that into what you're doing to help reduce violence in Uganda, throughout Africa, and throughout the world. Victor?
Thank you very much, my brother Chic. It's a great honor indeed that I am in your house today. And thank you so much for hosting me for the last few days that we've been here. And most importantly, I do extend my sincere gratitude to the fellowship committee who are part of this discussion today. And as always, thank you for guiding us and for everything you're doing together with the team. And also, I'm incredibly blessed to be part of this initiative. From the very beginning, I was part of the natural launch of the Dambach Fellowship for Peace Education or Peace Studies at Oklahoma State University. And most importantly, to introduce a bit about myself, my name is Victor Ochen. I was born and raised in the northern part of Uganda, in the camp for internally displaced persons, which in short is IDPs. Northern Uganda, as most of you might have known, is been a region that went through over 2 decades of violent conflict, which displaced close to 4 million people for over 20 years. And myself, I happened to grow up in the camp in Northern Uganda, spent my first 20 years as a child growing up in the camp in the midst of war. I'm happy today that I survived the hardship of conflict. And today I call myself as one of the survivors who transformed their pain, their trauma, their suffering into an opportunity for leadership that is geared towards promoting peace and justice in the world. I am happy that I happen to be among majority who chose to stick with peace, even though there's no option, there was no means to remain peaceful. Growing up being born and growing up in northern Uganda taught me valuable lessons in life. Among many was how to become a tolerant person even in the face of injustice, but also most importantly, to stick to the principles of peace and humanity, even though you had no much choices. So from the time I was born, growing up in the community, witnessing all sorts of atrocities and injustice of war, at the age of 13 years, I was already afraid and worried and struggling to survive and wondering what would happen to me every other next day. So to me, every new sunset, every new sunrise was an opportunity, which I am so grateful that I lived to see the daylight of today. And also 20 years ago, or almost 19 years ago, I started this initiative called African Youth Initiative Network, which was primarily to help me mobilize my friends and members of the society, promote peace and justice, with a particular focus on discouraging and decampaigning the child soldiers recruitment, which was happening in northern Uganda. Northern Uganda, as you might have known, it's a region that had the highest numbers of children recruited and trained to become soldiers. So on record, according to UNICEF and Save the Children report that came in indicated that over 66,000 children were taken and recruited as soldiers and they were forced to harm their own families, to harm their members of their societies. And to date, over 30,000 children have never been accounted for, including my own brother who was taken 20 years ago. So it's a society which is going through wounds and nursing the wounds of decades of conflict and going through the hardship of post-conflict recovery. But it's a society that also presents so much hope in a community that comes from the African region that has known not so much peace for long times, but people are struggling to overcome the atrocities of conflict. I am happy to be part of this. I'm looking forward to sharing more about my stories, my lifestyle, but also to learn more about what great, wonderful work people are doing around the world, including our initiative, which is framed under the Dambach Fellowship. I'm delighted. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Victor. I get inspired by it every time I hear it. I've heard it many times, but it's just so incredibly impressive. I'm not sure anybody watching this has any sense of the impact that you are having on Uganda, on Africa, and the entire world. People all over the world pay attention to what you have to say because of your commitment, your dedication, your intelligence, your articulateness, and ability to express a value of reducing the frequency and severity of violent conflict on this planet. What can we do to be more helpful to you in what you're doing? We as the fellowship here, but anybody paying attention to this, what can we in the United States do to be more helpful than we have been?
Again, thank you so much, Chic. As you said it very rightly, I equally feel blessed and delighted that I am close and learning always from you, among many other instrumental people in this space for world peace. Yes, to begin with, as you ask, what can be done to support initiatives like mine, but also to support people who are doing wonderful work like what I'm doing in different parts of the world? You know, to pick up from, war took so long in northern Uganda. A lot of people died. A lot of people were displaced. And generations lost fundamental values, the culture. And it took a lot, way more than the society could bear. Today, I stand to celebrate the capacity, the ability of the population of northern Uganda to go through so much in life, and yet something good could come out of it. To begin with, it's very difficult for something good to come out of conflict. It's always devastation, always death, always suffering, demolition, destruction, an absolute sense of hopelessness. We have tried. It took us forever to decide that let us transform our trauma, our pain, our suffering into opportunity for leadership, to promote peace, a culture that we grew up without, a feeling that we never had at all when we were growing up. We always imagine what a beautiful world would look like. What would it mean to have food every day? Those were the dreams we had. What would it mean to be in a society where, as a child, you wake up in the morning to go to school? And most importantly, what would it mean to live in a community where you're not afraid of being abducted or being killed? You're not worried of walking along the road, you'll not be blown off by the landmines. These were the fears, these were the expectations, these were the imagination that we had ourselves. It was always a dream. Like any child, I dreamt that I wanted to study to become a doctor, to become a pilot, to become an engineer. But all those dreams were amputated too soon by conflict that had taken our community for far too long. And this is the kind of the suffering that we went through. A lot is good in the world too, in as much as there's so much grave and terrible things happening in the world. Let me also admit that there are wonderful people in this world, and a lot of goodness is existing in the world today. When you ask, what can you do? What can people of the United States, what can people of other parts of the world do to support like what we're doing, especially the Dambach Fellowship? I feel every time an initiative like the Fellowship plants a new seeds of peace builder, a new seeds of peacemaker. It's a contribution to the world of peace and stability. I'm so happy that through the Dambach Fellowship, a very intentional education program is being supported to educate the young generation of peace builders. People who are willing to sacrifice, to dedicate, to commit their life, their time, their knowledge to making a world that is stable for everybody, so that every boy's child and a girl somewhere would live not worrying about their family, about their life, about their future, about their health. Number one contribution is in education, planting the seeds of peace across, giving opportunity for young people to study and be prepared to be leaders who are championing the peace agenda. This is a very important contribution. And then coming as a practitioner, as I said earlier on, it is very difficult for something good to come out of war. I've seen it in my community. I've seen it in communities across the continent of Africa. I witness it, what we're seeing today in the Middle East, in Israel, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in other parts of the continent, in DRC. The suffering is appalling. The suffering is exhausting. Humanity is at a crossroad. So if we can, whoever can support any initiative of peace building, I would welcome. And I think sometimes, let me also be honest, that sometimes I feel I'm carrying the whole world in my back. I feel exhausted, worrying how much longer can I continue with my agenda for peace without running out of energy. It's taxing. Every day I spent my entire life helping the poor, the sick, the victims and survivors of war. I need support. And the support I need, among others, includes working to help build a society that is peaceful, and also, most importantly, being given academic opportunity, academic space, being given platforms to testify, to engage, to talk, to speak, to include, and to work with the population. So I am happy. I'm looking for support. I'm demanding for support, that I need a backup. I need to be recharged. Even a space to amplify the voices of the victim is a good enough support. Even an opportunity to connect our struggle to another platform is a good enough support. So I am blessed, I am happy, and I continue appealing and asking for such kind of support so that we can do more to save more life. We have done so much. We have supported society, victims of war. To date, we have provided medical rehabilitation to over 25,000 war victims. Those whose lips, nose, ears were cut off. Those who were amputated, legs, hands were cut off as a form of punishment and torture. And those women who were sexually abused, they were raped, their child mothers, the child sex victims, and those who were infected. These are the people that we work with every day. They need our support. We also need your support. In simple terms, I can say we do need and appreciate support from any other person who can help us, help other people who are living the life of pain and suffering. We can get them out of fragility, vulnerability, and give them hope and dignity. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Victor. Appreciate the insight. All of us could use it and pay attention to it and be responsive to it. A couple of members of the Founders Council, the fellowship, have questions for you. Sherry Caves has a question, and let me turn it over to her.
Oh dear. I had several questions, and Victor is such a very good speaker that I know he'll tailor it to our time. One of them, Victor, is I was trying to visualize your time in growing up in the displaced persons situation, and I thought you might tell us a bit more about your family and the effect on the family there. And let's see, then I was also hoping that you could share, as you were beginning your peace alternative in that situation, and through those formative times, was there support that was very meaningful and really made a difference to you from whatever source? And then I'm very aware of the Carter Center and their work in Liberia and some other places, neighboring countries. I was wondering if you knew of any work in Ghana by them.
Again, thank you, Chic, and I'm very grateful for the wonderful question from my sister Sherry. Thank you so much for asking about my family, how my family is. If I am directly being affected, my family has directly been affected by war. Yes, you know, one thing I learned over the time is war destroys institutions. War destroys government institutions, United Nations, international organizations. War destroys businesses, but war destroys one key important institution, the family. It destroys the family, tears apart the family, tears apart hope, derails the opportunities, derails the members of the society. I did witness my family struggle through. I think the biggest worry I had as a child was if my mom, whom I was entirely relying on, if my dad, whom I always cried looking to his shoulder to carry me on, would not be taken away from me or would not be killed. I worried alongside together my brothers and sisters. What would happen if our only mom, our only dad that we looked up to them were taken away from us? To us, this was critically important. To make it very clear was, how do we manage a society when you are all taken away? Every hope you have is taken away. And also, the biggest fear of the parents were, if the children they love so dearly, the children they work so hard to feed, to educate, to shelter, to accommodate, to clothe, if they will not be taken away from them. Reasons of the worry were legitimate because we saw children are being taken away every day. So it was due to war that my mom died. She died of preventable disease, malaria. It was only 20 minutes drive away from where she could have got the medical support. But she didn't get it because the road to our home was blocked for months and we couldn't. We tried our best in order to carry her to the hospital, but it was impossible. I lost my mom because of that. I lost dear friends. I lost my own brother who was taken among the children who were taken from northern Uganda, with my cousin and my niece, my other close family members. To date, we continue to wait for their return. I've not seen my brother for the last 20 years. He's among the over tens of thousands of children who were taken and are still missing. We don't know where they are. We don't understand their state of affairs, but we can only assume that they're in the land of the missing persons. They're presumably dead or alive, but we can't rule out that we'll one day see them. But that's the impact of war directly in my family. My suffering resonates with the suffering from many people from different parts of the continent. Like my sister Sherry asked about if I worked in Ghana or in other parts of African continent. Yes, we have been doing so many other work with young people from different parts of the continent, engaging into youth peace education and leadership development, and trying to promote the culture of human rights as a pillar for justice and accountability. So we have had several exchange education programs for young people in West Africa, coming to East Africa, going to Southern Africa, doing the rotational peace education and going through historical areas in our continent that we've been working so hard to make sure we let young people understand the history, so that when we excavate the history, whether at home, at national level, or at a continental level, history is used as a tool for healing our society, as a tool to prevent more atrocities, as a tool for mass atrocities prevention. That history will not be used as a tool to escalate the pre-existing injustice, inequality, and suffering. So we have always trained young people, we have always worked with them, and we have been engaging them in several important ways to make sure that they are part and parcel of the struggle we are seeing in the continent. So that has been our work within Africa, with the young people, but also most importantly, amplifying the voices of the victims. We have had several exchange programs, including continental support for the victims of war, including promoting international justice and accountability mechanism for victims of war. All were intended to intervene and support and respond to the crisis of human rights violation, the crisis of justice in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, which has been happening in the African continent. So thank you so much, my sister Sherry, for asking that. And I hope my story, my family story, resonates many other family stories around the world. Thank you.
Here. Thanks so much, Victor. That's tremendously insightful and valuable information. And I believe Hank Hankla, the chair of the Founders Council, the Fellowship Founders Council, has a question for you. Let's turn it over to Hank.
Yeah, my most important one is we want you to tell us a little bit about your plans for the future. I understand you may be contemplating something political. And my other part, which I doubt there'll be time for, was I worry a great deal about violence and threats of violence affecting democracy here at home. And you found a way, a third way, perhaps, to deal with that, and how you might recommend that we stand up to the Trump forces that want to settle everything with violence.
Thank you so much, Hank, for a very beautiful question about my personal plan and how to deal with violence back home. Yeah, it's a very important question. To me, it's about, have I made the best use of my life since I've lived so far? How am I happy? Am I happy with how I've used my life? I've made the best use of my life since. And I think, yeah, I'm happy to where I am today. It's been a journey of turmoil, it's been a journey of survival, it's been a journey of struggle and pain, but it's also been a learning journey. In my life, I moved away from the winning mentality, where instead of focusing what should I win, and when should I win, and how should I win, I focused on growth mentality. How can I grow? How can I keep on learning? How can I become an asset to the society? That I learned from it. I built my culture, the culture of tolerance, the culture of peace from the society that I grew up in. Let me also say that I'm one of the luckiest person that have witnessed the worst life can give, the worst part of humanity, and also the best life can give, the best part of humanity. So I've been working so hard in many ways, but as a leader, emerging from the grassroots, emerging from the rubbles of conflict and terror, a leader with people at heart, a leader pursuing an agenda to heal the wounded in the society. Not only do we seek to heal the physical wounds, but also emotional wounds. And most importantly, it's been my motivation that my life on earth, for the remaining time I'm living on earth, I want to be working towards promoting the healing in my society, the healing in my community. The history is so painful. People have moved on. We have got a society where there's been generational transfer of trauma from one generation to another generation, because young people are born into wars. They see their parents struggling every day. They see their families being abused. They see their government abusing the resources meant to help them. And they're living the life of destitute and life of hardship and pain. They can't make it. Majority of children lose out from the day they were born because their families can't afford to even pay $3 to care for their malaria, which could take their life. I've seen families who cannot even, their children fail from day one because the families can't afford to pay schools. So it's been a pain in my heart that how can we work so hard to become part of the generation that will bring relief and ease to the eyes of the most affected population, the population that has cried for too long. They're running out of tears and they're becoming hopeless. I hope that, God's willing, I'll play a significant leadership role at a national level, and I continue to play a significant role at a continental and international level. If God could allow me, if God asked me what would I want to do, I would want to say, He helps me lead and bring sanity to the political atmosphere of my country. And I hope that I'll play a role at some point at the political level. In the question of how do we bring stability and promote non-violence at home, it comes down to the mindset change. For far too long, young people have not been told about how to embrace alternative to violence. But I'm saying we can have a political atmosphere that can bring about peaceful change. We have to reach a point where we can change leadership in our country without using violence. Uganda is one of the countries in the world that has never seen peaceful political change in our country. But we need to help this generation understand that we can come and change, cause political change without having to destroy. So I hope to pursue and promote a culture where a generation will move on from killing our ways to power to embrace loving our ways to power through democratic processes. That's my hope, that's my dream, and that's what I'm working towards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victor. The best thing I get to do now that I'm an old guy is work with young people like you who will pick up the torch and carry it on far higher and far better than anything I and my generation is ever able to do. Thank you so much for all that you do and for being a friend and for helping out with the fellowship and what we're doing. We appreciate it and look forward to seeing more of you. Take care.
Thank you so much, Chic. It's a great honor that I'm part of this discussion, but also most importantly, to know that I'm part of the Dambach Fellowship for Peace, which to me is the most significant thing to happen right now. Aware that the natural fellowship, the first ever awardee, comes from Africa, Clinton. I'm so proud that a continent like Africa would be the first beneficiary of the Dambach Fellowship for Peace at Oklahoma State University. This is the spirit that we should carry forward, our greater determination to stand in and stand up for people in need and promote world peace and stability. It's my joy to identify with this fantastic initiative. I hope I will contribute, and I hope most importantly, the legacy of somebody whom I admire so much, Chic Dambach, the person whom I saw his work and his heart and his passion for Africa, having been part in so many mediation efforts in the African continent, and now conducting and leading so many initiatives in Washington, D.C., all advocating and pursuing agenda for Africa. I'm so happy to align and identify in the fellowship that honors somebody whom I celebrate, I treasure as a mentor, a champion of world peace. Chic Dambach remains an inspiration to me and to millions of other people around the world. And the fellowship means so well in a way that we can only carry on planting the seeds of peace so that the world stability and unity and sanity may return, so that life may be saved. Thank you. It's a great honor. Thanks to the audience. Let's promote the agenda. Let's support the legacy. And thanks to the council members, the fellowship council members, council board, for the support to Dambach Fellowship. Let's carry on the torch. Most importantly, let's celebrate the life that has transformed so many lives. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Victor.